From Synozur, this is Polaris. I'm Chris McNulty. It's already been a busy year for Microsoft product announcements, and that's even more true for the pace of Microsoft community events, from Las Vegas to Atlanta to Germany and beyond. We're wrapping up a busy first half of the year with TechCon 365 in Seattle on June 23rd. Today, I'll sit down with David Wilhelm, president of TechCon 365, to explore the journey that's led us to Seattle, what to expect this month, and where the road ahead will take us. This is Polaris. Welcome to Polaris Pathways. I'm your host, Chris McNulty, Chief Technology Officer at Synozur. Synozur, the transformation company, reimagines business for our clients, navigating strategies and leadership culture with ease. Today, I'm happy to introduce David Wilhelm from TechCon 365. He'll be along in a few minutes. But first, let's define our terms and our data points. And as usual, our reading list and references will all be included in our show notes. Recent trends show that while AI adoption is accelerating, security and governance remain major roadblocks in the enterprise. According to Gartner Research, more than half of organizations, 52%, say risk factors are a critical consideration when they're evaluating new AI projects. And with Microsoft's rapid pace of innovation, staying current is more important than ever. Many companies are eager to deploy AI, but a shortage of skilled workers is holding them back. Despite all the buzz, organizations often struggle to turn pilot projects into full-scale deployments because they lack in-house expertise. In fact, a recent IBM Global Survey found that limited AI skills and expertise is the top barrier preventing enterprise AI deployment. About 1/3 of large companies cite this as a major obstacle. Even though the technology is available, businesses can't use it without people who know it. Other research echoes this point. Earlier this year, a survey from Blue Prism showed 35% of business leaders said a lack of AI skills and expertise was a big barrier to adoption. So it's clear the talent gap is a real issue. This is exactly why training and expertise are so critical. It's also why events like TechCon 365 exist, to help you build those skills. In the era of Copilot and YouTube, you might ask, why attend a tech conference at all? Why not just search for answers online? I think conferences bring something unique you just can't get online. Real conversations, tailored advice, and the chance to learn from each other. Whether it's chatting with an expert about a work challenge, swapping stories with peers, or soaking up the energy of attendees, the connections and inspiration are priceless. Virtual options help with accessibility, but nothing beats the immersion and spark of being there in person. And that's why tech conferences are thriving as key moments for professional growth throughout our community. In terms of personal connection, we already have David waiting in our virtual green room, so let's go. Welcome back. So today I'm excited to introduce our guest, David Wilhelm from TechCon, PowerCon, EveryCon, and more. David, welcome to Polaris.
Thank you so much for having me, Chris.
So where are you calling from today?
I'm calling from DFW, good old Texas.
So let's get into it. I know the audience may not be as familiar with you as I am. Let's chat about your background. How did you get started with tech conferences, back in 2009?
Well, I've had a training background going back to when I started actually working with Microsoft partners in '99. And we noticed kind of as 2000 rolled around into those first couple of years of the new millennium that there was the traditional brick and mortar 3-5 day classes. It was becoming more difficult for folks to pull as much value from that. And certainly as we got through 2008 and the downturn that happened then, a lot of folks were being cross-trained. They had multiple job role responsibilities, and they really needed kind of exactly the training they needed for their job roles to take stuff immediately back to the office and have some very practical knowledge come out of that training. So we saw a need for that type of a training concept that wasn't around other than kind of in the conference space. And so we had some conversations with some Microsoft folks, and they had asked if anybody would be interested in, possibly pursuing a smaller, more localized, regionalized event, and threw our hat in the ring and said, yeah, we'll give it a shot. We have the background. We know how to deliver training. We have relationships with Microsoft and the community. And we did the first one, starting with SharePoint Fest, coming out of the SharePoint world. And it was a huge success year one. It just was something people kind of had this craving for, being able to go in and choose exactly what they needed, have it in more like kind of bite-sized chunks, get
Yeah.
exactly the sessions they want, but get some, forward-thinking stuff from Microsoft that they might not otherwise get as either a small or mid-sized company or more of a localized company. And so they kind of had a mix of the best of both worlds. They got the training they needed. They got exposure to Microsoft and folks that they wouldn't otherwise have had. And we've evolved from there.
And so where was that first SharePoint Fest held?
In Denver.
I believe my first one of your conferences was the second one, which is also in Denver. But
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we did. We were doing one a year at the time. And so we started in Denver, and then we expanded Denver, Chicago. We've done New York, Dallas, Washington, D.C., Seattle. So yeah, and now Atlanta. So we've kind of been all over the place. But yeah, it started in Denver and grew from there.
so you're probably not allowed to have a favorite city for the sake of your audiences.
Potentially, yes.
But I am. I many times over the years you have it in early December, and I'm
Mhm.
not the Polaris travel agent, but early December in Chicago is fantastic. The city is just lit up for the holidays. You have the Christmas markets and the shows,
Mhm.
and it's just a wonderful time of year to be there. And hopefully, one of these years it'll cycle back around there again. But over the years,
It'll be here next year
that's great.
in June. So quite a different time of year as far as Chicago is concerned, but we will be back.
I may not wear my Santa hat, it being June in Chicago.
Understandable.
From SharePoint Fest to today, what you're running today is TechCon 365, which has a much broader remit than just SharePoint. What was that journey like for you? Why did you do that?
Well, ultimately, Microsoft steers the ship for a lot of what we do. And as I mentioned, coming out of the SharePoint space, and we were in that space for a terrifically long time, and it was great. But as SharePoint rolled up into this larger thing called Microsoft 365, and we started to see over time a kind of I don't want to say a hybrid, but it was more of an environment where folks needed more than just SharePoint. They were certainly from that school. That was the base of what we did. But we started to see folks needed some things outside of just the SharePoint world, or certainly the organizations did. And so as Microsoft pivoted, we pivoted along. But I think the customers were pivoting along with Microsoft as well. And so it evolved into this Microsoft 365, and then eventually adding on Power Platform as well. As that gained traction, we again saw so many customers, not just an individual per se, but the actual organization and the Microsoft customer. They had needs in all these various areas, and having them available in one location allowed them to pursue it as more of kind of a team activity. We see a tremendous amount of groups coming into the events, and they're across various lines of business inside of each of these Microsoft customers. So, yeah, it continues to grow and evolve, and that's kind of how we ended up with our three-part event in Seattle this year.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think as you had individual technologies that may have run separately on premises, as they kind of moved to the cloud, you see much more interconnectedness between M365, between Power, between Azure. And
Mhm.
so it definitely makes sense to be able to sort of do three for one, because if you're a SharePoint administrator, let's talk kind of your classic person who came to SharePoint Fest. To be successful today, you also need exposure to Power, and you need to know how to run the Azure portal. And so,
Absolutely.
right? So you're saving two airfares for many of those folks by coming to one place.
Yes, absolutely. And it's the funny part is you always feel like you have to like build your audience as you launch new products like this. And certainly in the event space, you're always searching, hey, we're going to launch this new event. We got to go find this audience. For us, we really haven't had to do that. Our audience is our audience. Our audience is Microsoft customers as organizations. And so as we add these on, they kind of go, oh, cool, now we can do this there too. And it's just kind of a no brainer where, yeah, they can send various teams to the same event. They get that collaborative experience together where at the end of the day, they can share things they learn. They can, even divvy up the next day's sessions. And it creates a really cool dynamic team experience for folks as well.
I think one of the tips that I give, especially to organizations, and you're right, when I go to TechCon, I see far more 6 people attending from the same organization than 1 or 2. One of the best practices that we've seen is to have that cohort gather every morning at breakfast, which is a great way to sort of recalibrate what did you hear yesterday, where are you going today, and to make adjustments to the schedules that people choose as they pick their own adventures.
Yeah, I think we even see that reflected through the attendee app. There's a communities tab in there, and we can see these actually in real time. There's some of these internal conversations going on, where there are some organizations that are so large, or they send large enough teams where not everybody even knows who's there, and they end up kind of catching up with each other through the attendee app, and you see this networking going on in an inter-organizational way that I think is just fantastic. It's a tremendous opportunity for folks that maybe, the SharePoint folks or somebody on the M365 side, they don't interface with the Power folks as much or the data folks as much. And it can even build some relationships that may not exist just by bringing them together in these formats.
So, David, TechCon is a mid-sized event. It's not a 100-person community event like a Collab Day, and it's not one of these Death Star-sized events like Ignite. It's somewhere in the middle. What are some of the pros of coming to that sort of mid-range event that you've seen for attendees?
I think there's a couple of things. First and foremost, I mean, you're going to have a lot more direct access to experts, thought leaders, Microsoft folks, MVPs, whoever that might be, at a 600-person event than you would at a 5,000-person event. And, so kind of that attendee to expert ratio works really well. And so you're not competing as much with, kind of the crowds to get in and spend time with folks that you might want to ask a direct, kind of maybe more of an intimate question because you don't feel comfortable asking in a social setting or in a group or breakout session setting. If they're approachable, folks are around, you're able to do that. And so, you'll definitely see that. And I think in general, that kind of leads into just attendees feeling a little bit more seen, like they're not just a number at one of these large events that where they're just kind of a warm body and a mass of humanity. Ultimately, they're there, and it's you're not you're not anonymous. Everybody there, and we do see a lot of those interactions just in the hallways where folks will stop each other and be like, "Oh, you work at so and so," or we do little flags on the name tags where they can say where they're from or what their job roles are, and people will legitimately stop each other and spark up a conversation over those things. Not everybody will, but we see them, and so I think it just kind of leads to that little more of a we always lean on the term community, a little more of a community feel. But I think again, it's just more of that. You just feel seen. You have more access to people. It's going to be logistically easier for you. You're not doing giant long treks down hallways and trying to find rooms and sweating to death. And ultimately for us, we're able to lean a little heavier on the community side of our content as well,
Right.
where we know our attendees are coming to get really practical, usable, like I talked about where we came from, 15 years ago. Like they want practical, usable stuff they can go back to their office and use. And while the forward looking and all that stuff for Microsoft is awesome, and everybody wants that too. But I think in these smaller scale events where we're a little more in control of the content, you're going to see folks be able to get that little richer, deeper, day of practical content than you might see at some of the other larger or even more marketing based event opportunities.
Yeah, I mean, and speaking during my decade at Microsoft as someone who created lots of those marketing moments, yeah, it's a lot of fun, but people
Hmm.
immediately come out and say, when can I get this? And that's something I've
Exactly.
definitely kept in mind. There's a session that I think I'm doing in Texas this fall about how do you extend your company brand throughout all of M365? And that's all practical stuff. Everything that people get
Hmm.
there, they can go home and immediately start using. The other thing I think that's a hallmark of your event is it's really diverse. And I think about that diversity in multiple avenues. It's not just the traditional diversity that people think about, but there's a diversity of role. You have business folks, you have IT pros, you have developers, and you also have diversity of budget because on a practical basis, not every organization can afford to put 6 people on planes to fly around the world to go get trained. But
Yeah.
if you're going to pay for someone to go to an event and they can do it within a 3-hour car ride, that just opens up this kind of community to a lot more folks who wouldn't be able to participate otherwise.
I think you hit the nail on the head about something is while these larger events that you see, yeah, they're fun, they're great and all those things, and they have a place and a purpose, and they're fantastic. The other piece of it is there's so many of those people that can't go. I mean, you think of the breadth of what a Microsoft customer is and how many there are out there. They're not all being reflected at these larger conferences. I don't care if there's 10, 20, 30,000 people at them, they're not reflected. And so there are these kind of swaths of folks regionally that aren't going to go to Vegas, aren't going to go to, wherever the big shows are, San Francisco, wherever. You hit it on the head. Yeah, that drivability where the T&E is now taken out of the equation, or at least portions of it, it opens up that audience from an attendee perspective to get access to this level of training in this format of training that they wouldn't otherwise have.
Right.
And then also in terms of just the community as a whole, yeah, that this is a significant opportunity for maybe underrepresented folks at the larger events to get access to Microsoft resources or third party product and services vendors resources in the expo that for them to dig through the internet and try to find a product or a service for a problem that they have. They could spend days, weeks, who knows? Or they could walk into an expo that's 2 hours away from their house and have conversations with 35 different vendors and find that solution, much more quickly, or find the answer to a question they have for Microsoft more readily available.
Yeah, some of your attendees are local. I do remember there was one gentleman whose name I forget back. I think it was the year you did 3 or 4 events, and I was trying to make sure I went to every one of them. Um, there was someone I saw in DC who I thought I'd seen in Denver, and I asked him, "Aren't you from New Zealand or someplace outside of the US?" He's like, "Oh yeah, I fly to every one of these." So there definitely are folks who are coming from all over the world as well. So
Yeah, we see just to kind of answer that for you. At this last year in Seattle, which was our biggest Seattle to date. This year will surpass that. But last year in Seattle, we had attendees from 50 states and 14 countries. We've never had an event that had an individual from every single U.S. state. So we found that to be a kind of a cool thing. But yeah, 50 states, 14 countries. So they are coming from all over because it's a date thing too, right? They can't always make the dates of the other events work. So we just happen to have the right date that's a good location for them. But yeah, we still see it is a very much a regional play with 25-30% of the audience coming from the area surrounding.
So, David, you talked a lot about the opportunities for direct engagement, and we were chatting about the repeat attendees. There are a lot of first-time attendees at every one of these events. What can they expect? What does that direct engagement look like for them?
Sure. It could be as fundamental as literally walking up at the end of a session and asking the speaker, "Hey, can I have a couple minutes with you when the session's over?" In a very informal way. Or it could be doing things like the Ask the Experts booth, where we have time slots for thought leaders and Microsoft folks that they can sit down and spend 10, 15, sometimes 20 minutes, whatever it is, whatever they can kind of set aside and ask direct questions to some of these folks that they've only ever read their blog or seen them on LinkedIn or seen them at a different conference or at a Microsoft show. It could be the AMA where they ask Microsoft anything, where they can go and sit in the audience and ask direct questions to Microsoft executives. And the executives are kind of across all the teams. We make sure that the modern work and Microsoft 365 org is represented, the Power Platform org is represented, in Seattle, the Azure Data org is going to be represented. We also try to have a licensing person participate if possible. and they can ask direct questions to folks there in real time. And we provide lots of opportunities. Generally, if you have a question, you're going to be able to ask it. So it's not like, we're queuing up people in huge lines. So that's another opportunity. We have the community lounge. Microsoft comes in and sets up a Microsoft community lounge, and that's staffed by both Microsoft's employees as well as prominent community members, MVPs, folks from across the world. They'll come in and be available in that booth to give away some stickers and chat you up and let you ask questions and engage, and kind of that will also help you get involved in like a program like MGCI, which is Microsoft's Global Community Initiative, where you can actually engage more directly with Microsoft on an ongoing basis. And then ultimately, again, it's just back to the speakers, where you will be able to bump into those speakers. You'll see them. They'll have their speaker badge. You'll recognize them. They'll be in the expo. They'll be walking down the halls. And I have never once had one single speaker ever say that they would not stop and have a conversation with somebody if asked. And so, there's lots of different moments that we have. But again, it's just kind of, that's the overall feel of the event. And that's what's intended is, it's meant to be approachable. It's meant to have these different resources for you to feel engaged and feel plugged in and be able to get your questions answered.
I can tell you as a speaker, it's also gratifying when you finish a breakout and 10 people charge the stage to ask you questions. I always feel like if I don't get asked questions, did I do something wrong?
True.
Sure. So,
yeah, absolutely.
So looking ahead, when is your next big event and what's going on there?
So the next big event is going to be in Seattle. It's actually just in a few weeks. And
a month away. I've got to finish my slides.
We hear that very often, and we know the slide game, but it's it's going to be in Seattle. It's our flagship show, we like to call it. It's 3 events co-located into one location, which is going to be the Summit Building in the Summit Convention Center in Seattle. We're going to have TechCon, PowerCon, and DataCon all in one space. So if you're looking for content in the Microsoft 365 world, the Power Platform world, Azure Data, SQL, Fabric, etc., we're going to have content for each of those different areas for attendees. And they all share the same expo. They all share the same. We have 3 different keynotes, so there's keynotes delivered for each of those areas. And so we're really excited, along the lines of what we talked about previously with organizations needing access kind of across the organization to what they're doing with Microsoft, with how broad their implementations can be. We're seeing that group mentality really take hold in Seattle for this event, where we're seeing folks across all 3 of those groups. So that is our next big one. That's our flagship. And then we will also be in Atlanta a couple months later, and for TechCon and PowerCon, and then we will be in Dallas in November again for TechCon and PowerCon, and really excited about both those cities as well.
I think it's great that you're coming to Seattle. I'm excited you're going to be in the new convention center because it's brand new with great AV and all that sort of stuff. But I'm kind of curious, what excites you about coming back to Seattle this time of year?
Well, my easy answer is, and always will be, it's the food. It's one of my favorite food cities in the world. And I grew up in Chicago, and so it's crazy for me to say that Chicago isn't my favorite food city, but they're neck and neck. And so I think being in the Pacific Northwest in the summer is fantastic. It's great weather. It's a great time. And I get to hit some of my favorite restaurants. But another piece of it that is great for me, and it translates to being good for attendees and sponsors and everybody, is just the access to Microsoft and the Microsoft resources and Microsoft people that we might not see in some of our other cities. And so I think it translates into a really great environment. It's great for me to be able to spend that time with those folks that I only ever generally interface through Teams or on the phone. And so Seattle's a really unique opportunity for us to bring it to a city we love, and it happens to be in Microsoft's backyard.
I always love on Polaris to take our guests beyond the realm of technology and business and look outside. So I'd love to hear about something from that world of pop culture, a song or a TV show. What's something that's had an impact on you in the past several weeks?
It's an interesting question because I was just having this conversation with someone related to food. I'm sorry, it's all about food with me, but I've been watching this documentary on Netflix called Chef's Table, and it's around these very prominent chefs around the world, and it's an ongoing series for a long time. And actually, there's a Seattle restaurant in there that's featured as well. But what I've noticed about this, and it was in this particular episode that I was talking to a friend about, is the community building nature of chefs and restaurants, and how I feel some of that in our events, where there are these moments in our lives where they truly lend themselves to community building. And I think conferences are one. There are many others, but I think as in watching this, I hit that takeaway, and I mentioned this to somebody. I said, I always think of like I have traditionally thought of a restaurant as very transactional. Like, I show up, you give me food, you give me drink, I enjoy myself, I go home. But especially if you live in a neighborhood, and this could be large city, small city, whatever, and you think of those like neighborhood restaurants where, the cheers mentality, everybody knows your name, whatever. It's that community building that I think is really, it struck me in this particular show. And it made me think a little bit more about how we can do that better in our conferences, and how we can do that better in our events moving forward, and how important of a piece that is. And you certainly see some of the folks that come in and they look like a deer in headlights, because they're kind of like, I don't know what to do with all this. And I think we need to take that opportunity and help them feel a part of that larger community and do these various things that we've already talked about, but thinking about how we can do that better in the future as well.
Yeah, well, in honor of a fictitious restaurant from your home city, all I can say to that is, yes, chef.
Yeah. Noted.
David, what's the best way for the audience to stay in touch with you?
Ultimately, you can go through any of our websites. I'm available super easily on LinkedIn. You can just search for my name, David Wilhelm. You'll see me associated with TechCon, or now FabCon, the Microsoft Fabric Community Conference. So you can dig through there. You can visit our website at techcon365.com or fabriccon.com and research all of our upcoming events and reach out to me directly through there.
Yeah, FabricCon I know is going to be a huge event for the community next year, and I'm really looking forward to hopefully having you back on to talk about that as we get a little bit closer.
Absolutely. I would love to.
So David Wilhelm, he's the president of TechCon 365, and their next event will be kicking off June 23rd in Seattle. David, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much, Chris.
We'll be right back. Up next on Polaris Events. We're about halfway through 2025, but there seem to be more events than ever coming up. Beyond TechCon 365 Seattle, here's what we're watching. Mastering Your AI Rollout Success Strategies. This will be online June 12th. Synozur CEO Michelle Caldwell will present tactics and approaches to shape your AI planning and pilot projects. Also online, June 17th, our Business Strategy Masterclass with our own Matt Schaefer. He'll be showing you how to develop and sustain business strategy with the Synozur Company OS. Heading into summer, FY26 Forward, Microsoft Partner Success Strategies. On July 29th, I'll be sitting down online with our CEO, Michelle Caldwell, for a fireside chat about Microsoft's plans for the new fiscal year and how Microsoft partners can align for success. TechCon 365 Atlanta will be coming starting August 11th at the Georgia World Congress Center, and TechCon 365 Dallas kicks off November 3rd at the Irving Convention Center in the DFW area. Closing out the year, we're looking ahead to Microsoft Ignite this November in San Francisco, as well as ESPC 25 in December in Dublin, Ireland. We'll have more details later in the year. We'll have links to all of that and more in the show notes. You can learn more at Synozur.com/events, and we'll add more events throughout the year. And if you have an upcoming event you'd like us to promote on Polaris, please get in touch and we'd be happy to include it. Well, that's a wrap for another episode. I'd like to thank our guest, David Wilhelm, for joining us and sharing his thoughts on TechCon 365 and the Microsoft community. We encourage you to check out our show page for links to everything we talked about today and more. Visit us at polaris.synozur.com. Send us your questions and feedback for the Synozur team. You can reach us via email at polaris@synozur.com. Remember to rate, review, and tell all your friends about the show. Follow us wherever you get your favorite podcasts. Polaris is produced with help from Riverside.fm. Our theme song, Alternative Dream, is provided courtesy of Adobe. Additional music and sound provided by Indie Guy Records. Graphic design by Josh Brantley. Thanks for listening. I'm Chris McNulty, and this has been Polaris, a show that charts the course for business and technology transformation from Synozur. Learn more at Synozur.com. See you next time.